Today's episode of Wine and Dime is sponsored by Rooted Planning Group, a fee-only financial planning firm that believes life is about events, supported by your dollars and cents. And we want to help you achieve your goals. Hop on over to www.rootedpg.com to learn more about the services. Hi, Wine and Dime listeners. Amy Irvine here again. And the tip of the month for wine is from a winery out in the Willamette Valley of Oregon called Airlie. Airlie was one of the places that we stopped when we were out there visiting. Hop on over to their website, airliewinery.com, to check out all the different wines they have available. This week, I am recommending their dry Gewürztraminer. I'm not generally a huge white fan, but I certainly liked their Gewürztraminer. It was nice and tart, I would say, had the grapefruit notes that you want a Gewürztraminer to have, and it definitely pairs well with spicy food. We hope you enjoy these little tips, and if you have any suggestions for us, please let us know. Every week, it's my goal to share financial information that helps you in both your life and financial vineyard. We hope it takes you from your roots to the journey of your vines and the influences in the air that have helped craft your delicious life. Like wine, life and finances have different palates that should be celebrated and not judged. Well, welcome back, Becky. We're so thrilled to have you. I can't believe fall is in full swing at this moment. We're talking about the fun topic of open enrollment and benefit structures once again this year. It seems like we cover this every year, but there's always something more to be talking about when it comes to open enrollment. I'm always amazed at how creative companies are getting with the benefit structures that they're offering anymore. So we are always trying to tell people, don't leave things on the table, because, it's often just the check of a box that can get you into something very inexpensively. So Becky and I thought that we would kind of have a jam session about open enrollment and some of the things that you may not even know that you have available to you, right, Becky?
Yeah, it's a fun time.
Yeah, fun time. And the average person spends less than 20 minutes, if that, actually making the elections. And what I say, that's the funny thing is that when we are working with our clients, we spend probably close to 2 hours doing that analysis. So when you think about, and we're pretty knowledgeable about these plans, but we look at it at a very specific window for our clients and looking at how it fits within their plan. So by us saying that we're spending 2 hours and the average person spends about 20 minutes or less, you know that there's a lot of people that just say, you know what, I've got a lot going on in my life. I'm just going to check the box. What if that's working? I'm not going to explore or dig in to see if I need more, right?
Yeah.
So let's do that today. Let's draw the attention to people about what kind of things should they be looking at? What might be available during open enrollment that they might know about and they might not know about?
Yeah, that's a great question. So a lot of times when people think of open enrollment, they do think about insurance. And so a lot of times it's usually health insurance that people think about, but they forget about reviewing their life and disability coverage, and also looking at outside of the insurance scope, like if legal plans are available.
Yeah. So let's talk about that a little bit. So like life and death, because a couple of weeks ago, I did a podcast with Kate, and we really dug into like the health insurance terms. But let's talk about some of the things that might be available on the disability and life insurance side. And like you said, those other miscellaneous benefits. So thinking about first disability insurance. Your company might have, I know a lot of the clients that we work with, there's sort of two options. One is a default disability option, and one is a upgrade, I guess you want to call it, disability option. So for example, a company might say, well, if something happens to you, we'll give you short-term disability for so many weeks at 100% pay or lower. And then after 6 months, it kicks into long-term disability, and that long-term disability might be 50%. Like that might be the default, right?
Yep.
And then there might be, like I said, an upgrade, if for lack of a term. Let's talk a little bit about that. What are you seeing with some of our clients as far as if they elect to pay just a little bit out of pocket, what can they get?
Yeah, so by paying a little bit out of pocket, you still get to benefit from the group pricing. And you can often increase your coverage from, say, 50% to like 67% or so. So you can increase that coverage pretty significantly, really for pennies on the dollar, because you don't think about, the financial impact that, that 16 or 17% of your pay can make, but it's really huge.
Yeah. And part of that, because if you're paying for that 17% variance, right, that's paid with after-tax money. So it comes to you with after-tax money.
Yes, that's a great point to make. A lot of people think that disability insurance may not be taxable, but if your employer pays the premiums, then you could be in for a surprise come tax time when that income is taxable. But like you just mentioned, if you're paying for additional coverage, then that additional coverage amount is not taxable.
So think about that from just pause for a second. So if my company's paying 50%, the default is 50%. I know my salary is going to decrease to 50%, like just off the bat. But it's not just the fact that it decreases by 50%. It's the fact that I also have to pay tax on that 50%. So even if it puts me in a lower tax bracket, typically that's going to be 25 to 30% that I'm still going to have to pay on that money. So if I'm just going to use easy math in my example, if 50% of my salary is $1,000, I start, my salary was 2, I go to 1. And now I have to pay tax on that. It could actually end up only being $700. So that I'm like pausing and allowing silence for that to sit in a little bit, because I think that's something that a lot of people think, oh, it's not a big deal, but that really is a big deal. So doing your head the math of taking half your salary and then only 70% of the difference, could you actually live off from that? Well, what if your company doesn't offer a supplemental plan? What do you do then?
Yeah, well, there's a couple of options. One is you can really dive into your expenses and create what we call the B word, budget, and see if there's anything you can cut. Maybe you don't have to travel as much because you're not driving into the office. So some of your expenses may go down just by nature of not working. But are there other expenses that you can cut? Like maybe instead of dining out twice a week, maybe cut it down to once a week. And, once you figure out what you can cut, then what's your gap at that point?
Mm-hmm. So what I'm hearing you say, just to clarify, is that first you need to solve for what your coverage actually needs to be.
Yep, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, and if after you do that analysis and there's still a gap and there's no way you can get around that gap, then you can look for an outside policy. So you can get an independent disability policy, and you can do that by contacting an insurance agent that you may have already worked with in the past. Mm-hmm. Or if you work with a financial planner, you can reach out to them. And it's also something that the financial planner should be bringing to your attention as well. Mm-hmm. And, ask if they have recommendations on who to work with, because they may know someone local to you or someone who's not going to be too sales pushy and trying to sell you what you don't need.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's really important. That's a really important note, because thinking about the benefits of having a policy within the company. One of the benefits is the fact that you usually don't have to go through underwriting. But the con is, if you leave the company, the benefit usually stays with them, right? So we love to take advantage of the benefits that are available through your company. We want to make sure that's sufficient, but we also want you to know that if you ever leave the company, you typically can't take disability insurance with you. So sometimes people will say, well, I don't need the coverage, but I want to make sure I have that portability and I want to get it when I'm young and healthy and don't have any kind of medical conditions. But if you work for a company that offers these kinds of benefits and you need to change jobs, you're probably going to look for companies that have similar benefits, right? Just to do a side-by-side comparison. And be careful not to be overinsured when it comes to disability, because these companies coordinate with each other. You can't have more income coming in if you have a disability than you had prior to the disability. So to Becky's point about the fact that, don't be cautious, be, offensive when it comes to being oversold on the disability side, because you could be sold a really good policy, but if what you have with your company and what you have with an outside policy is collaboratively more than what you're earning, you're not going to get that. Like, it's just, you've got to see, well, who pays first and how do they coordinate benefits? And even if you do have an outside policy, if you ever become eligible for Social Security, I will bet that the language in that disability policy actually says the amount that you're receiving will be decreased by the coordinated benefit that you get for Social Security. So it's looking at all those pieces, right? And there is another benefit, I guess, to paying for an outside policy. It goes to the fact that we were talking about earlier, that if your company does elect to offer a disability policy that is something you can pay for, any outside disability policies are typically tax-free as well, because again, they're all tax-free dollars that you're using. So that is a pro to using, or, having a policy outside your company also. So, that portability and the fact that you wouldn't pay taxes on it. But I think it goes back, Becky, to what you said. How much do you need? And solving for that is a really important piece of it, because typically you don't need 100% of your compensation if you become disabled. What do you hear most people, when you're talking to clients and you're thinking about it from our planning perspective, what do you think most people think they need for disability?
Yeah, a lot of people seem to think they need their full wage replacement. But, between the different savings that you can cut, you really don't necessarily need that full amount. And some other outside things to think about real quick are sometimes your loans actually have a disability clause within them. So that can help reduce your actual need. So look at your loans. It's possible that your mortgage has a clause in it that says if you're disabled, then you don't have to make payments for the time of your disability. We see it very commonly with auto insurance auto loans. And same with federal student loans.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Thank you for bringing that up. And that's something that you can usually ask for at the time that you're taking out the student loan, federal student loans. It's automatically written into the language, but the auto and the mortgage is or home equity, even like if people are refinancing or taking out a home equity line of credit, that's something that you could ask for at the time that the loan is being written. And generally speaking, there's very little underwriting associated with that. It might be a very brief questionnaire. So it's an easy way to get that coverage built in if you have potentially any medical conditions that would prohibit you from getting disability insurance. So the other thing that is very common is life insurance. What do you typically see being offered by employers for life insurance?
Yeah, it varies widely based on the company, but for larger companies, you often see 1 or 2 times base salary as like the base benefit. And then from there, some companies do offer more than that, but many also offer like a supplemental policy where you can pay a little bit and get, maybe 3 or 4 times your base salary in coverage.
So you pay for it, but you can elect 2, 3, 4 times your base salary. So if you make $100,000, you could actually elect, say, 4 times your base salary and have $400,000 in coverage.
Yep.
And then you pay for it at a group rate. I think they're usually in ranges, right? They're usually based on it's group rate, but it's group rate based on the age of the individual, and lots of 5, I think is usually what I see. So you'd be put into a group of your price would be based on, for me, it'd be between 50 and 55, right? So it's still cheaper than going out and getting $400,000 of coverage because they're looking at the actuarial formulas and the fact that it's the group would be lower cost than going out and getting my own individual policy for that kind of coverage. Thinking about coverage like that, though, again, if you have any kind of underwriting struggles, often you can elect to get into those kinds of plans without an exam within certain levels. Usually they'll let you get in if it's under a certain dollar amount, when you start getting in like to 8 times salary, they might have you do a basic paramed or something. Or if you wanted to add more coverage than whatever the language of the plan is, then you might have to. But often you can get these plans without any kind of underwriting involved, which I think is hugely beneficial to clients.
Yeah, it definitely is. And a lot of times you can also get spousal coverage and dependent coverage. Usually that coverage is at a fairly low amount, but at least it's something.
And it's usually pennies on the dollar.
Yeah.
Yeah. The other thing is that often those plans that are like that, those supplemental plans, they're often portable. So unlike the disability plans, the group life insurance plans, you often can take with you. So that's something. And because you are taking it and converting it, you wouldn't have to go through the underwriting. You'd just be able to take it with you. So that's something to keep in mind when it comes to the life insurance elections. What if I can't get enough through my employer?
Yeah, so very much so, like with disability, you can work with an agent that you may have worked with in the past, or, your financial planner can help make connections. And there's companies out there that we've worked with in the past, such as like LLIS, where, they pay all of their employees' salaries. So they're not going to be pushing for you to get more coverage than you need. And they're going to be honest with you about, how much coverage you really, truly need to be paying for.
That's important.
Yeah, it is. And you can also reach out. Sometimes whoever your employer has coverage through, you may be able to work with the same companies that they work with just outside of the group plan.
Yeah, like if it's MetLife or Guardian or something like that, you'd actually be able to reach out to them and have Unum is another big one that's been in the news a lot lately, that in a not a good way, but they do provide some outside coverage as well. So yeah, that's a great idea to do that kind of thing. And then thinking about some of the other benefits that often costs very minimal. You mentioned the legal plan. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so that's one that a lot of people overlook when they're going through the open enrollment. But the legal plans often give you some kind of legal coverage for a very low cost. And that legal coverage could be used if you're going to be purchasing a house. They can assist with the whole closing process. If you get a speeding ticket, then sometimes they can, help reduce the fine. Or if you're working on your estate planning documents, depending on who the attorneys are within your legal plan, you may be able to get some estate planning work done as well.
And those plans typically are around $300 to $400 a year. So not, if you're looking at it from a biweekly perspective, it's, $8-9 per pay period that you're utilizing those plans. And I laugh when you made the comment about the speeding ticket, because we actually know a client that did that. They got a speeding ticket. They happened to have a legal plan, and they were able to get the attorney to reduce instead of them going to court, the attorney was able to reduce the ticket to a moving violation, which was very meaningful to that person. So another type of benefit that might be out there is accident. They call it AD&D, so accident, death, and dismemberment insurance. A lot of companies offer that too at like pennies on the dollar. And often, like life insurance, have it for their spouse and their children. Talk a little bit about what AD&D is.
Yeah, so the accidental death and dismemberment. So if you're in an accident or something and you pass away, then there may be additional coverage that your beneficiaries may be able to receive. Or if you lose an extremity, like say that you're in an accident and your arm has to be amputated, there could be an additional payout for the loss of that arm.
Or eye or toe or finger or whatever it might be. It's amazing. I had never put this together, but I don't know if you knew this or not, but if you lose a big toe, your balance is significantly impacted. You wouldn't think about that. I mean, it's this tiny little, thing on your foot, but it actually is hugely impactful on your balance.
Yeah, that's an interesting one.
Yeah. Or if you're right-handed and something happens to your right hand, that's a big deal, So yeah, those are all like AD&D. It's based on the extremity. Like there's a whole list of things. Like if you have a dismemberment, that what is something worth in general. But it helps. I mean, it's always there's anything that's there, and for pennies on the dollar, it's something that you can easily get into and have as a benefit. Any other key benefits that you can think of that people might overlook when it comes to open enrollment?
There's a lot of different benefits that revolve around health insurance. But, every single company is so different.
Yeah,
so it's really important that you look down line by line to see what your company offers.
And fully understand it. More and more companies are starting to offer financial planning as an example. And, it looks great. Like, oh, my company offers financial planning. And I'm totally jaded when I say this, right? Because they offer some financial planning, but they won't offer like specific, like they might say to you, you need life insurance or your asset allocation should be X, but they won't give you like who to work with or specific investments to allocate to. So don't pay for something. Like if they're giving it to you for free, great, go ahead and use it. But if they're charging you for it, make sure you fully understand what you're getting into for that benefit too, before you think, oh, great, this is a benefit that's offered, I'm just going to sign up for it. Make sure you do your homework on that as well.
Yeah, great point.
Oh my gosh, we covered a lot in the last 20 minutes. Is there any other final tips that you would give to people? I guess just kind of thinking through the process. I guess we talked about what might be available. We talked about analyzing your benefits, and we talked about where to possibly go if you need more. Any final suggestion that you would give to folks as they listen to this podcast during open enrollment?
Yeah, the final suggestion that I would have is, even though it's not a benefit, as you're going through all of your coverage, double check your beneficiaries.
Yes.
It's a great time, if you're making changes anyways and you notice a beneficiary needs to be updated, just go ahead and get it done with so you don't have to think about it later.
I love that tip, Becky. That's probably the number one thing that we stress about. I mean, when it comes to, this sort of stuff, because we don't always see where those, what you put for beneficiaries. So that's a great tip. If you don't hear anything else on this podcast today, listeners, listen to that final tip from Becky. Check your beneficiaries. Well, we appreciate the time that you've spent with us today here on this podcast. If you have any questions, concerns, you'd like to hear specific topics for us to discuss, please drop us a note. We'd love to hear it. And don't forget to hop on over to iTunes and rate us. The more people that rate us, the more people can find us. And we're also available on LinkedIn, Twitter, and Instagram and Facebook. We hope you've all enjoyed the show. Thanks, everyone.
And that will about do it for today's episode of Wine and Dime. You can contact Amy through the website, www.rootedpg.com, or amy@rootedpg.com. You can also follow us on Facebook and Instagram @rootedpg for the latest news. And if you have any questions, comments, or topics you would like to hear about, feel free to let us know. And don't forget to rate and subscribe the show wherever you get your podcasts. And again, thank you for listening, and be sure to tune in next time.